Good afternoon. Welcome back to Cool Your Heels with Lillian Cauldwell on AMFM247.com and PassionateWorldRadioNetwork.com. The world in your hands. And today our special guest is Sheri Whyte, who wrote several books in the series, but the one we are concentrating on today is called Tir Na Nog. So good afternoon, Sheri. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you, Lillian. Thank you for inviting me to your show today.
Well, it's important to invite people who actually write a book for and with substance in it to hope that the children who are reading it will pick up on what you're trying to share with them.
I agree.
And I was delighted to see that your book fulfills that goal on my part. So could you please tell everybody why you started writing those type of books?
You bet. Let me just first tell you the title is actually Finding Tir Na Nog.
Excuse me.
No problem. So it's Finding Tir Na Nog, which is book one in the Stelladar series. I've been writing since I was quite young. As a matter of fact, in sixth grade, I was given the assignment, we were all given the assignment to write a novella. Now, in those days, there were no computers, and it was all handwritten. And I remember stapling this little booklet together and thinking, what should this story be about? And I discovered at that time that when you write, especially when you write fantasy, you can go anywhere, you can be anyone, and you can do anything. And this was a real kind of a new concept to me. I wrote this little story called Good Grief, Gasped Garrett, It's Grease. I still have it. It was horrible, but my teacher thought it was wonderful. As a matter of fact, he gave me an A+, and he wrote on there, you are a writer. So it was kind of at that time that it was just instilled in my mind that, again, I could be anybody. I mean, the protagonist was a boy. As a matter of fact, in Finding Tir Na Nog, he's also a boy, 16-year-old boy. So I just love that aspect. Secondly, I write because, and I write this type of genre because I love the phenomenon of time standing still when we do whatever it is we love to do. And I know that happens for writers. I do believe in time travel and portals. And I think as humans, we can go through those portals to other worlds, so to speak, whenever we're fully engaged in a creative process. So for me, writing is one of those processes. Let me just, on that point, I'm going to read here a quote from the first book of the series by a character named Fiala. And she said this. She said, when one is ready to experience pure imagination, he or she is infused with an accompanying feeling. But imagination is not the feeling. It is what creates the feeling. And so we're talking about this ability to go somewhere and be something with our imagination. And I believe that in fantasy, whatever we can actually come up with in our minds is possible. I really do believe that. It may not be possible in the three dimensions that we experience in this world, but our imagination can go to endless dimensions. So I love that. In the second book, it's called Fading Heart. Riley, the main character, says this. He says, now is either a mirror of the past at a higher frequency or a reflection of the future through imagination. So again, it's this whole idea of creativity and imagination. And then finally, the reason why I write is because, as you know, writers, those characters get in your mind, and once they introduce themselves to me, I'm hooked. And I'm in for the long haul, whether I like the character or not. And sometimes I don't like the character, but I have to be true to them, listen to them, and see what part they play in this story for Riley. And I honestly don't feel like the story is mine. The story is Riley's story, and my responsibility is to listen to him and the other 49 characters in book one and then write what they have to say. So those are some of the reasons, the main reasons why I write.
And that's important. You just can't sit down, despite what you may believe, sit down at a typewriter, or in today's world, a computer, and just dash off a book unless you give it some thought. You don't have to have the ending in mind, but you certainly have to have an inkling of who your characters are and have them become inflated so they're three-dimensional.
Absolutely. They have to be believable. Especially in fantasy. Fantasy, although it goes into the realms of science fiction and dystopia and all these other kinds of things that we don't necessarily think that we see in the real world, it has to be believable. Finding Chernobyl certainly goes into the realm of sci-fi and time travel, and I do a lot of research about that and about the science behind that. So I think as a writer, you do have to do a lot of research to make fantasy believable. My characters also, I research their names, and their names are chosen very specifically for very specific reasons. And like I said, there's 49 named characters in book one. It's a very complex story with a lot of characters, a handful of main characters, but each one of them have a name that's chosen specifically, and I think that adds to the authentic believability of a story.
Oh, absolutely. If you read, and very few of them have, but if you read the classics and pay attention to what the author is doing with some of their characters, you'd be really surprised at the amount of time they give to create these characters. They're not stick book characters by any means. They're people who actually live and breathe. I still remember the article I read about some fan of the Hornblower series that was very upset. She couldn't find any historical information on Horatio Hornblower. She was devastated when she was finally realized that he was a combination of several people in naval history that Mr. Forrest put together.
Mm-hmm.
That he was a combination of several personalities. And,
yes, and
it just blew her away.
Yeah, and the author has a real responsibility to be true to whatever that is for the character, and that takes some skill, and like you say, it does take research as well, so that you know what you're putting together. For example, the series itself is called the Stelladar series. Stelladar is a word I invented and put together with the root word stella, which means star, and dar, is D-A-U-R, is a derivative of a German word meaning door. So Stelladar means star door. And throughout the series and on book one, Riley is on an adventure of finding this place called Chernobyl. Now, I did not invent Chernobyl. That is a Celtic legend of a land of endless youth, wealth, and peace. And he has lost someone that he loves, and he's trying to find this place where he believes that person has gone. And so, yes, we have to be true to those words that have meaning behind them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know in one of my books, I have my kids going down into South America. And they believe that a giant snake connected this world to the Milky Way galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally have them walk up the snake's tail into the galaxy. And there are always certain rules in any fantasy that you have to follow. It's nothing that anybody made up, but it exists. And you have to pretty much stick closely to those rules, because if you don't, it won't be believable.
Right. I love that. So that's a portal that they go through on that snake's tail.
Yes.
Similarly, in book one, Riley goes through 7 different portals to different magical places. And all of them relate to water in some way. This Chernanog is the Celtic legend actually takes place under the water. And for him, all of these portals have to occur in some way through water. So one of them, he goes through an ice cube that's in his glass. So, it's completely random, but it is applicable because, like you say, it follows the right rules for that.
Exactly. And if you don't know what these rules are, then you need to do some research on how to write a good fantasy book. Because there's rules for magic, what is allowed and what isn't allowed. I mean, even Rawlings followed them. And because if you don't, it won't be accepted. And even in the werewolf series, not the werewolf, the vampire series, where she humanized the vampire, she still stuck and made it follow a logical trail all the way through. She didn't change horses in midstream. And you have to be careful when you set these worlds up that they adhere to whatever you're setting up for them.
Yes, absolutely. Getting back to that research and how that applies to believability, there's a character in Finding Chernanog named Sequoran, which is a giant talking tree. Talking trees are allowed in fantasy, but I do have to say that I did a lot of research about the way that living things communicate with one another. And scientifically, they do actually communicate with one another. One of the reasons why I added this character is because I live in a forested area, and my husband and I were on a walk in the forest, and Lily and I heard a talking tree.
Why not? You should. I know that if you hear one, folks, I usually hear them, or they usually be heard mostly when the wind is high, or it's a little bit fogged in, and you're there with the tree and stuff. But you also have to understand that to become one with nature, you have to be part of nature.
Yes, and this mighty Sequoran is definitely a tree that knows a lot because he's been there a long time, and so he's witnessed a lot of things, and Riley becomes friends with him and is guided to this Stelladar through Sequoran. Another character that is in the book is an albino dog, and I saw an albino dog just in my neighborhood when I was on a run, and beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And that's how the character Tuma was introduced in my mind, and Tuma became a key part of the entire series as well. So, you have to be in tune to what comes to your mind and then see how that is a possibility and how it's a reality.
Absolutely.
Become a reality.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
No, excuse me. Go right ahead.
I was going to say one of the greatest compliments I ever got was from a 12-year-old boy in a class that I was doing an author read. And he raised his hand and he said, "Is this real?" And the kid next to him nudged him with his elbow and he said, "No, it's not real. It's fantasy." And he said, "No, I'm pretty sure it's real." And I just love that because he got that whatever it is you can imagine in your mind is possible. And as long as you follow, like you say, those rules of fantasy so that it's believable, it's possible. And a question that I pose to my readers, and it's actually on the back of book one, it says, what if after a very long time you got what you thought you wanted? And I love watching the kids that I go and speak to, I love watching their brains start to think, and you can see in their eyes they're going, is this real? Is this not real? And the Stelladar series definitely bridges that gap between what is real and what is not real. It gives them pretty much permission to believe in the impossible and bring that back to their own life to see how they can make something that they think is impossible become possible. So I love that about fantasy and about what I actually have coined as young adult transcendental fantasy. In other words, again, being able to take transcending your readers in a very real way to give them permission to believe the unbelievable and impossible. And then when you transform as a reader internally, then solutions can appear externally. You can take something that you've read that, like that kid said, no, it's not real. And you said, no, I really think it is real. And then they can go find their Stelladar. I don't know if you want me to tell you, besides a star door, Riley discovers that a Stelladar, it's an ancient heirloom that is given to him by his father, his grandfather had it before him. And a Stelladar can bring to each person who finds one, and I believe everybody on this planet does have one somewhere, but it can bring to them their greatest desire. And in one of the scenes in this first book, he's sitting with his father who's talking about his grandfather and he's saying, well, how will I know if I have a greatest desire or not? And his grandfather has told his father this. He said, a wish becomes the greatest desire at the very moment when a person's belief in the seemingly impossible is stronger than any doubt. Whenever I read that statement or say that at a reading to kids usually, but adults as well, you really have to stop and think. Is this something that I really truly want? And does what we want change over time? And why does it? But if we can truly have whatever it is we want, then we probably have to step into the realm of the impossible to make that come about. That's really what the whole series is all about.
Well, I think that kids today need that kind of what I call brain stimulation because they don't have it anymore. The computers and the tablets and the cell phones pretty much bring to them whatever they want, whenever they want it.
Right.
And somewhere along the line, I know I'll probably be burned at the stake, but I don't believe that Harry Potter does much for kids. To me, it's a nice fantasy thing, but it doesn't do anything for kids. Certainly doesn't show them how they need to grow. Certainly it doesn't really give them the idea that they themselves are a part of something that can be bigger than themselves.
Well, and, to empower themselves, like I say, to take what others might think is impossible or not real and actually implement it in their life through the power of their imagination, to create something, again, to go to that creative process themselves.
Not too many kids do that anymore these days.
Well, and adults as well. And you're right, it's kind of stripped right out of them at a very young age.
They start conforming. I have 3 grandkids, and my 12-year-olds, my 2 12-year-olds, they're twins. They're already conformed, so that nothing sticks out. Everything is smoothed down. I mean, they're smart kids, and they do everything just right, what their mother calls the total package. But I really feel sorry for them because they really are not aware of a deeper place that they can go.
Right. I absolutely agree with that. I do creative writing workshops as well that just go into that place of deep imagination and creativity and how you can bring forth something, really manifest it in your lives. And I got a wonderful, wonderful, blessed review from a woman named Astrid Witch. She lives in Germany, and she wrote this because it speaks of what you just said. So I want to read that to you. It says, in this truly remarkable book, S.L. Whyte has returned me to the dreams of my childhood, dreams that formal education had drummed out of me. Seldom have I come across a philosophical perspective weaved so beautifully into an adventurous love story, easy to read and compelling from start to finish. This is a must-read for anyone young or old. if you are open to understanding that dreams create reality. This believably magical story provides profound truths on how to create the reality you yearn for and the dreams you dare to dream. Whether you are a teenager experiencing the awkwardness of first love or an adult seeking to understand life itself, the Stelladar Finding Cherninov will give life a whole new meaning. And I so appreciated that review because it just clearly encapsulates what you just said, that children have it drummed out of them so quickly and at such a young age. And I have adults who also read the book and say things like, I haven't felt this way since I was a kid. And you brought something, Riley rather, not me. Riley brought something to me that I haven't visited since I was a child. And so, yeah, I love that. And that's what all 4 books of the series do, is bring you to that place of empowerment with your own ability to imagine and create. And that's what the Stelladar can do, is bring to you what you want.
And that's something people have been searching for since the dawn of time. Think about it, folks. You always have been promised right outside of your grasp, outside of your reach by a couple inches, that there's a place where there's eternal peace, or you can always see the northern lights. Mm-hmm. People give it different names, but basically it's something that you have to find within yourself before you find it outside of yourself.
Amen to that. In the second book, called Fading Heart, a character named Sam, who is actually a giant whale, says this about light that you just spoke of. Your Stelladar shines a light on possibilities, but destiny begins when imagination brings ideas to your mind. Then choices emerge. Your heart determines which you choose.
And that's very interesting as well, folks, because what she's telling you is that you have to give yourself permission to believe even the really simple things. Mm-hmm. If you listen to some of the people, scientists who talk about the Guapalupes or some of the jungles in Indonesia, they say these are places that still haven't been explored. And we have found animals there that went extinct 100,000 years ago. So just imagine what would happen if you could find a place like that inside your own space and go within.
Yep. There's so much power in that, and you do have to get a place to where you give yourself permission to do it, though, and that permission is kind of what's been stolen from the minds of our children, and then they grow up without the innate ability to believe truth or believe light or believe possibilities. I'm just looking at here a similar quote from a character named Satara in the third book of the series, called Fraction in Time. And Satara said this: truth is the first ingredient of a Stelladar. It is what makes the jewel shine so brightly. Every truth is manifested in its own grain of light. But when truth is disregarded, ignored, or in any way shunned, the grain of light will fade. And, it's painful to see that grain of light fading. But fantasy, young adult fantasy, is a wonderful way to reintroduce that and allow kids to step outside of their own ugliness and darkness and whatever they're dealing with in their lives, because there's a lot of that. And again, give themselves permission to spark that light within themselves and see what they can do with that light.
Now, according to your credits that I was reading, you're the founder of the Stellador Academy. What's that all about?
Yes, thank you for asking that, Lillian. The Stellador Academy is an online educational resource for youth ages 13 to 17 and for teachers. It's basically goes over the kinds of soft skills that we don't really get to see in school anymore. Forgiveness, affirmation, stillness, those kinds of things. There's 12 character concepts that are addressed. And this book, Finding Chernanog, is one of the main resources that's used to explore these character qualities that we all need, but this is specifically for youth. And so you can see more about that at stelladoracademy.org. But book one of the series is used and read and kind of explored in depth as a way to empower youth to find these parts of their innate character that maybe it's been squashed or hasn't been had an opportunity to be clearly explored or revealed and used in their day-to-day lives.
So, Sheri, please tell everybody where they can find you, all your books, your website, of course, on the World Wide Web, and anything else that you feel needs to be shared.
Well, thank you. Yes, all of the books are on Amazon. Book one is at Barnes & Noble. Let's see. I can't even think of all the places, but they can all be found on Amazon at just Stellador, which is Stelladaur. You can go to stellador.com or slwhite.com and find links there as well with a lot of information. A book trailer on book one is there, information on the Academy, and trying to think, what else did you ask?
And how they can contact you? Is all that information on your website?
Yeah, it's all on my website. More information about the books, excerpts from each of the books. I've got a link to read all about all of the characters of each of the books. Currently, I'm writing the fourth book of the series. That'll be out sometime in 2019. And definitely the series, book one, I would say the age range is probably 9 to 15, but book two gets darker. Book three is more dark. And so definitely the characters grow with each of the books. And so I don't know that a 9-year-old would be ready to read book two, but probably 10, 11, and up to, mid-teens. For adults, like I say, adults as well really love the book because it's very complex. I mean, a 9 or 10-year-old can read the book and see all of the elements of classic fantasy, many elements of classic fantasy, but it's a very complex story. And as I, read some of those quotes from the book, you can see that there's a lot of depth and meaning to the story as well. Very layered, and a lot is going on, and so it takes a little bit more of an advanced reader to follow all of that and to internalize that.
I think that kids read what they can take away from something and then go back when they want a dessert or they want an appetizer. There are different layers and different courses. Certainly, when I read The Lord of the Rings in 7th grade, it said one thing to me, and when I reread it again back in college, it said something entirely different.
Absolutely, and that is definitely the case with the Stellador series because it's just not something you can get it all in one reading, to tell you the truth, because you've got all these little one-liner nuggets that make you stop and think about your own self and your own life and your own innate abilities to create something and to create the life that you want. So, one of the things that we struggle with that is our fear, in how we can actually do that. But I'll just read one last quote that a character named Fiala said in book one. Fear has a purpose if one's own fear brings one to the opposite of such. Otherwise, fear empowers disbelief and consumes imagination, without which no desire can be granted. We must have our imagination.
Anger works the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a motivational pivot. It makes you decide and choose where you're going to go
Mm-hmm.
and how you're going to overcome it.
Yep, and definitely Riley has to face both of those in this series, as we all do, with different things.
Yep. So, ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, you can listen to this interview all over again this coming Tuesday, which is next week, on AMFM247.com from 8 to 9 o'clock with Cool Your Heels with Lillian. You can also listen to it at https://PassionateWorldRadioNetwork.com, iTunes.com/Cool Your Heels, Facebook.com/Passionate World Radio, Twitter.com/PWR Talk, and all the other social networks available, as well as the directories. And before we go away and stray, William James had this to say: there's only one thing a philosopher can be relied on to do, and that is to contradict other philosophers. Thank you all very much for listening, and remember, please keep listening. Thank you.